Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about housing, not just as a policy issue, but a community issue. And this has long been debated in Mamaroneck and Larchmont and beyond. But I think it's really important for us to keep it at the forefront of our minds and our hearts, especially now in this economy where people are so concerned about where their next rent check is going to come from, how they're going to pay for gas and food. And just the general overall economy is certainly worrying not just low income families, but even moderate income families. So if we're thinking about our future and the future of our community, this is a topic to stay front of mind for sure. So I'm actually really honored to be moderating today with our community partners. I'm here with Deborah Barrios, who is our eviction prevention case manager at the Community Resource Center, where we empower immigrant and low-income families. I'm also here joined by wonderful members of the Mamaroneck Coalition for Affordable Housing, as well as other local organizations. So we have Andreen Smith, who has an amazing track record. She's the lead attorney on U.S. environmental, social governance, regulatory policy, and advocacy at BNY. And she's also the former chair of our local Affordable Housing Task Force. We also have Teresa Collier, who is our Community Service Director at Washingtonville Housing Alliance, which is a long-standing community organization here for over 40 years, doing affordable housing development and improving existing housing for our diverse community. And finally, we're joined by Melissa Kaplan-Macy, the Chief Initiative Officer at the Center for Housing Opportunity at the Housing Collective. So a huge range of experiences and perspectives are joining us today. I'm really excited to kind of get stuck in and start to talk about this important issue. So I guess I'll just start with an icebreaker for everyone. In one word, how would you describe our housing situation right now? Maybe we'll start with Melissa.
Sure. One word, it's difficult. Difficult for families, difficult for developing.
Mm-hmm. Teresa.
I think my one word is dire from my perspective. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
I would have to say uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know what's happening, what's coming around the pike, whether or not they can stay, do they have to go, is there going to be disruption? So there's this feeling of anxiety and uncertainty.
For sure.
I would say like unaffordable.
Absolutely. So unaffordable that we can't even take it anymore. So let's maybe start from the ground perspective, like what we're seeing on the ground, especially from like a case manager perspective or people who are working in grassroots organizations. What are you seeing day to day that is impacting our communities? Can you like share examples of how difficult it is for people to secure housing?
I think for me, what we see is daily phone calls to the office for like help. And it's kind of a desperate kind of help, which, you know, I think that's always been the phone call and the tone.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's becoming a little bit more hopeless for certain people. I think what we used to do is try to offer people immediate resource referrals, because Washingtonville actually just has 40 units, which is a small inventory in the big scheme of things, and they're kind of spread out throughout one little specific neighborhood. So we very rarely have any openings. Like it's just not a lot of inventory. And what we used to always offer people, I think years ago, was, well, do you want to go on the waiting list? And people were always just very eager, yes, put me on the waiting list, put me on the waiting list. And now I think what we're seeing is that people don't even want to be bothered with the waiting list. So whereas we used to use waiting lists sort of as a measure of what the need was, I don't even think waiting lists are a measurement, because people are now like, no, I don't want to be bothered with the waiting list. Like, I need something now. I don't want to go on a waiting list.
Right.
And I've already heard about the waiting list. So I think that also speaks to the need and people's desperation for help right now.
Absolutely.
Of course, I agree. You know, people are looking for housing, and our center is not providing like housing search, but we always try to guide them to the resources locally and referrals. But I see, they're concerned about when, timeline.
Right.
Like if I'm looking for housing, what was the issue? What is impacting people how to vacate their places?
And if people need to stay, is it because they're worried about relocating, or they're connected to their local school district? Like, why, if people can't afford here, why isn't it just like, oh, just move?
Because I think that's just it. People are connected. It's housing is more than just a place where you lay your head. It's got deep roots that sort of interconnect with everything. If you have children and they go to school, you don't want to uproot your children from school. You don't want to uproot them from their friends and their supports and their communities and their churches, and like it's all one big sort of connectedness. It's not just about a roof over your head.
Absolutely. And Melissa, when we're talking about this like affordable housing, what does that mean to be affordable? For in this like larger scheme of things, is it half of your income, less? What does that mean?
Yeah, so affordable is what's affordable for any family, right, or individual. So it really, the threshold mark is 30%. No one should be spending more than 30% of their income on their housing. And that, what people refer to as being rent burdened if you're paying more than 30% of your rent. And then a lot of people are paying more than that, 50% of their rent, so severely rent burdened. And I have just a couple numbers just, on that for us in the village, just, to really ground that. So just to, cheat a little, I'll look at my notes, but your area median income for a family of four is $146,000 in the village of Mamaroneck. So folks who are at 80% of that, or 60% of that, or 50% or lower, those are folks that, for one, really need affordable housing. And if affordable housing is not available, then that's really, there's a good chance that those families and all families are paying more because we just don't have enough housing that is actually affordable to people.
And if we're talking about like what people are making, let's say from like a case management perspective, are people making $140,000 a year?
Well, some people are, but clearly not all. Like, I mean,
what's like the estimate?
I don't have the documentation on stats on that.
It's around 60
60,000
for our families, for households. They do have to have like 2-3 jobs to be able to support rent portion. That's what I see. Also in terms of eligibility, and it's getting even more difficult, not only just the income source, but who has this kind of income? Probably engineering, like pharmaceutics, people who have like very specific certain of educational levels of work will be able to provide living in Westchester County, I will say. People are getting forced to vacate the place where they're living and look for different states around where can look for cheaper portion. Unfortunately, they feel like they have to do transitions, whether the kids want to move out different school. The impact that this create on families, it's not only mental, it's trauma. It's like how you just gonna go around and look for housing in the middle where you don't have access to it, or it's really difficult to get approval for.
Right. And even if you're like a moderate household income, that would still be a struggle for you? Or?
It could be because we just don't have enough housing at a lot of different income levels, and so there's a lot of people who are facing rent burdens, and that if you're paying more than 30%, then you're also sacrificing other things just to make that work and to be able to stay. So things like childcare, healthcare, food, and sort of that expression that the rent eats first, right? And then everything else. And so that's the position a lot of folks are in. I think across income bands from 100% of median, across a lot of different just income groups.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you think about this?
Yeah, just to ground that, I think that's exactly true. You shared something that I think a lot of people don't think about, the actual physical and health impacts and the emotional impacts of being housing unstable. So about 45% of renters in the village of Mamaroneck can't afford their homes because they're paying more than 30%, and somewhere around 24% of that are actually paying more than 50% of rent. And a lot of times people focus on the renters, which is actually the greatest need here in the village of Mamaroneck, but it also translates to homeowners as well. About 36% of homeowners are in a similar situation where they're spending too much money on their housing to be able to do the things they need to do, you know, put their kids in childcare, pay for the doctor, pay for school, pay for the other things that are also needed, and so it becomes a heavy burden. And when we worked on the task force, the numbers that we were looking at were from 2022. So you can imagine that's grown exponentially, right, over the last couple of years with all the things happening that you've witnessed in DC or just here locally. Prices are going up. You see that at the gas station. You see that when you go to pay your doctor's bill. You see that when you order anything, you know, at the grocery store, wherever. Con Ed. Oh, don't get me started on Con Ed.
It's horrible.
Yeah. So because of that, a lot of residents are feeling pressed and pressured, and a lot of times they're wondering, can I afford to stay here? But in the back of their minds, they're also thinking about their kids. Like we had testimonials from people as part of the task force that have been here for years, for decades. And a lot of families were displaced. And I think we're at risk of losing the diversity that we say that we value. And it's very important to keep that front and center. Like the thing that makes Mamaroneck special is at risk, and it affects everybody.
Absolutely. And I think like what you're mentioning is in terms of homeowners, of course, renters is like is a huge need. But is that why we keep seeing a number of events geared toward this conversation? In the last 2 weeks, we actually had a complete communities walkthrough with a panel following it. Yesterday, the local summit hosted a panel on this very same topic. So when we're seeing this, why are we still talking about this in Mamaroneck? Has the development changed in Mamaroneck that we're still trying to address? Like, has zoning affected us, or why do we keep talking about it?
Well, there have been a lot of zoning changes recently in the village. Melissa, I don't know if you want to go first.
No,
okay.
go ahead.
So as part of the task force, we presented a toolkit of options for how to maintain the stock that we currently have, especially with the Washingtonville Housing Alliance, but also how do we grow and provide more inventory, because that is really the biggest constraint, that we're not adding to supply. And since the task force ended, the village has actually changed several zoning laws that make it more difficult to build affordable housing generally, and housing overall. In Washingtonville, they downzoned, and so it's now impossible for someone to build a 4-family house in that neighborhood where you used to be able to do that. That's a sort of like small scale incremental development that was sort of naturally affordable. Like someone like me or you could buy a house and expand it a bit and have the rent cover the mortgage and help families at a lower price than some of the bigger luxury units that are prevalent all across the village. That's not available anymore. There are a couple moratoriums put in place as well, so it's just made it a bit more stressful and difficult to manage the process of building and providing supply that's necessary.
Yeah, and I'll just add, it's super interesting, right? There's so much talking happening now, right? Because people know there's a problem. Everybody's feeling the problem, what we started off talking about, and there's forums and discussions, but reality is there needs to be action. Right? So I think it's interesting to see there's so much more talking, so hopefully, that pushes for action, but I think, people, until folks are ready to really be able to roll up your sleeves and say, like, okay, there, and there are the places we're going to do this, then it's just going to be more talking.
Right. And this is part of responding to a comprehensive plan. Is that accurate, that this has actually been highlighted on our local comprehensive plan, and the point is to have action on it, not just conversations?
Yes, the comprehensive plan was from 2019, and affordable housing was at number 3 on the list of priorities in terms of what needs to be done. The community recognized that, and the Board of Trustees in place at the time recognized that, and I think it's just time to translate that into action to address the need across the village.
I guess now that we're kind of bringing that up, because I'm assuming that if affordable housing or housing is number 3, then likely flooding might be a top priority,
Number
especially in this
Absolutely.
community.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think we can all agree, because we live in a flood-prone community where natural disasters happen all the time, not just flooding, but also local fires, that this would probably be an important piece to address. So, I think flooding is a separate issue that we're continuing to address with our local municipality and Army Corps and things like that. But what happens when a natural disaster displaces families? And are they displaced? Like whether that's a fire or a flood, what are you seeing?
Then relocation turns really more even complex, because the requirements, if you follow up with a realtor, they will ask for 3 times your income is, and minimum it's going to be 120,000. So it's a lot of money for our communities, and not only that, but the lack of having social security number, the lack of credit, lack of barriers like communication, language, gathering documentations, income. We're talking about like for 2 family, a family of 4, let's say, who are willing to relocate. What do they need to have in place? What's the timeline to relocate? Paperwork, money, of course, that will be main number 1. And then if there is no money, technically you don't have no house. And if you go and apply for different other sources, how you can be there, if you call your family member, let's talk about in terms of fire, what happened recently in Mamaroneck. Families were displaced, so other family members have to help them, and then this turned into overcrowding issue. And overcrowding, it can turn complex in terms of court. They have to leave in the next few days, and then where I have to go after, if housing, I wanted to be, let's say, like the community says, like, I want to continue living in Mamaroneck. Mamaroneck, it's a good place to live. It's a nice area to stay. People feel safety, education, and many other reasons why they want to be like close to family members. And they wanted to return back and the families. That's what creates like more complex civility, unless they will be like connected with a family member who they will say like, you know what, I talked with my landlord and then he's willing to give you a place to stay. And then that will be the easy way, but we know it's not easy, as it used to be like years ago when you see the signs in Mamaroneck, house for rent, room for rent, and people whether see if they like it or not. It was a choice. Now you don't have no choice. You take it whatever it's available.
And when the Leicester Avenue fire happened, as you just mentioned, in the past, you could drive around anywhere and see like something for rent, or there'd be a whole list of local apartments available, or rooms or homes. And now, is it true that in this last fire you had to work with local real estate developers to find listings? Is that accurate?
Not necessary. Technically, I was able to get in touch with the realtor who was really helpful. And then I explained the situation, and I explained the barriers of our community, that were at the moment. And then he says, well, does your client have a credit story? Do you know? And then I have to follow up and see, how, and sometimes the limit of acknowledgement about what's a credit score. Starting from that, like, okay, so we provide those other sources like literacy classes where you can be informed and learn what is it, how you can build your credit. Because a person with the IT can build the credit. But it was not a list available. It was like about like, let's run out the credit. If everything was well, so I'll let you know in a couple of days what's availability and the village. And the next thing will be income. So if, let's say, one per individual who is sole maintaining the house, I have to address, like, is your wife working? Like, is she's being able to work? Is your son working? Like, we can gather those income together and see how we can, in both income, probably they will qualify for housing. So it's a many things of like connecting one thing connect to another one, and technically they're desperate for housing and not having the availability just to, there is an apartment over there. Yeah. I'll go there, and the flexibility to obtain the money.
And I'm hearing now that like the income is so low that you even have to rely on your children's income to make a whole income, which is kind of, that's a lot of pressure for a child. Even if it's a young adult child, you're having to take care of your family. And so, I remember John Burney in the local summit yesterday mentioning that for his first-time homeowner son, maybe the credit wasn't an issue, but it's 1.3 for a starter home.
Yes.
What do you think about this?
That's horrible. Because you mentioned the median income was somewhere around 140, but the income to afford the median home is going to be closer to like 400,000. So you think of that gap, and that's the same for renters. The median income to afford something, maybe you can afford something at around $1,800 a month. But in Mamaroneck, where are you going to find anything at that level?
About that source of income. And even they have to use sometimes, like, if the realtor is willing to work with them, they will sell like probably a cosigner. It will help with the income source. But that's very rare that it will work that way.
Right.
And the problem is at multiple levels of income. And people forget that when they think about affordable housing. Like, everybody needs affordable housing. Like, there's so many teachers in the village who can't afford to live here in the village, who may want to be a part of the community.
Absolutely.
But they need to commute in. The people that work here, they have to live so far away. Or emergency responders or seniors who are looking to downsize and they can't because there's no inventory. And just to make it personal, I have been trying to find someplace more affordable for like forever because I've been displaced since Ida. Haven't been able to go back home.
My goodness.
To buy another home because $1.3 million. Who's gonna?
Who's gonna afford that?
Exactly. And so it's across multiple income levels that the problem exists, and I feel like sometimes people don't recognize that.
Absolutely. And I'd like to get into like this emergency housing and ask Teresa, but before I do, when you're mentioning local teachers wanting to live here, if anyone in this community knows Mr. Chin, and I feel like everyone knows Steph Chin, he's been a music teacher in our school district for decades and has literally taught generations of people. And the family's lucky enough to live here. What if we didn't have a Mr. Chin in our community? Like, what would that mean? And it's just amazing to have someone who's watched you grow up and maybe watched your sister grow up or something, and we're losing the opportunity for even our local, our police officers, our school teachers, our workers to be in this community, I think. And so Teresa and I have talked about this a lot. And I think that when a disaster happens in our community, everyone's like, well, just like go to the CRC or go to this high school and you'll be able to go back to your home. And is that the case, though?
I think sometimes it is. I think, but more often it's not. Like when you have a natural disaster, that affordable unit sometimes gets taken out of the inventory.
Completely.
So then where are people going to go back to? And it's nothing but anxiety for people to be in that situation. There really is which is why there's just so limited available inventory. And we've done nothing to sort of increase that inventory. This inactivity is just creating a deeper and deeper and deeper crisis. Like, we got to get in front of it.
Absolutely.
It's just been crazy and maddening. Like, and we've gone through Ida, we've gone through COVID, and all of those sort of situations just sort of deepen the need. When you keep it decreasing and squeezing the inventory, that also breeds other negative sort of opportunities to grow, like people taking advantage. I know people And this is not about also an undocumented immigrant issue. This is just across the communities that people are renting rooms for $900, $1,000 for a room.
One single
One room
person.
with no access to kitchens. And people can charge that and people will pay that just because there's no inventory. It's ludicrous that we allow a community that's this well resourced to have those kind of behaviors and events happening in our community. We really need to do better for each other.
Right.
And I think
temporary-
it's, and I don't think it's purposeful. I think people just aren't aware if they don't know.
Right.
So I think that's also really what's important about these conversations are we just need to let people know what we see as the organizations that are on the ground that are getting the phone calls. Because it's easy to show up and say, oh, we don't have a need, we don't have a need. But if you're not hearing the people who are actually hearing the need, that's a disservice to the whole community as well.
Thank
Like
you.
literally, we get multiple phone calls daily, and it is local. It does spread out. It's not about only Mamaroneck. It's about you have people from New Rochelle and Portchester and Harrison. Like this whole sound is all community. Like you want people to come to your restaurants and invest in your businesses. These are also your neighbors that you need to be thinking about trying to invite into, helping maintain the businesses also. Housing, I know they often say, oh, it's not going to be for the people who live here. It will be for the people who live here and the people who support here as well. I think that's going to be the main goal. So I just really wanted to touch on that too.
Thank you.
How important that is for us to consider.
Absolutely. Thank you for highlighting why anyone should even care if it's not impacting you directly, because it impacts us all indirectly, even if we want to see it or not.
Right.
And so let's talk about solutions in the last few minutes that we have together. What are some action steps that we should be taking together? Melissa, if you have any thoughts.
Sure. I think it's been said in a lot of different ways, but I'll just, put a point on it, which is it's a supply and demand situation, right? There is tons of demand, there's no supply, so what we have is too expensive, and it's going to be that way. Like that isn't going to change until we create more housing, right? And if we're not intentional about affordability, then because it's such a constrained market that not only do we need more housing overall, but we have to be very intentional about creating the affordable housing supply and really just determining, again, like I said at the beginning, like where we're going to put it and do it. I mean, it's really that simple.
It really is.
It's not that complicated. We have the tools, it's just we need to use them. And there needs to be the public will. That's what's really missing, and that's why it's really important that we're having these types of conversations, and that there are conversations happening in the community and more of them and more frequently, which is great because that's the thing that's going to change it. We need the will to do what we know needs to be done, and then just to do it. Right.
And does that look like showing up at public meetings and talking to your elected officials, or what is that what you mean by public will?
I would say that you need to show up and speak up so that they know it's important to you. They understand that there's a direct impact, because I know we talk about indirect impact, but sometimes people miss that affordable housing brings a ton of economic benefits to the community. It helps reduce a lot of costs to the community. So we need to keep that front and center as well, but show up to the public meetings, send emails, talk about your concerns. The supply is not going to magically happen. We need to put the work in to make it happen. I think the Board of Trustees themselves need to rethink some of the actions they've taken that have made it harder to increase the supply and push those back. I think we need to provide affordable housing bonuses so that developers can be here and not miss out on the opportunity for smaller homeowners who want to add naturally affordable housing in different areas of the village. And I think we can do all of that while also keeping flooding mitigation front and center.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you all joining us and having this conversation. And maybe one word to end with hope, since we started with what are you feeling? And if there's anything at all. Melissa?
I think one word, action, just action.
Take action. Good.
One word. I'm going to say conversations.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm going to say momentum. I think starting this conversation can help create opportunities to do more.
I will say be brave. Speak up.
Love that. Housing impacts every part of community life, whether it's schools, businesses, health, stability, as we've heard today. And we hope today's conversation encourages you, the people, to speak up, to get involved, to ask questions. Be critical. Don't believe everything you read or hear, and get involved. Thank you.